Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the lecture for the month of February 2014. It is called How to Experiment. This month we are going to look at a shot that is in progress, and I am going to work on it and experiment in front of your eyes. I have had a lot of success giving students the encouraging push they need to start experimenting with their shots right in the middle. Unfortunately, there's no way to really come up with a ton of examples without just animating something. So I decided we are going to take a look at a shot in the Little Painter, and I'm just going to take it from, it's basically in layout right now, and I'm just going to start moving forward on it. The things that I want you to pay attention to, and I'll point them out as they happen, but it's where a little 5-minute experiment, a little 10-minute experiment will sort of open up new ideas for the shot. Sort of actually, if I'm going to compare it to the animating with tempo lecture and workflow, this is something that can kind of take you a little bit further if you've already implemented that into your process. With animating with tempo, you get to these timing choices that are really good. So you access your timing choices a lot earlier than you would if you had to pose characters. This is a little bit more of a subtle shot. Animating with tempo works really well with physical shots and ones where there's a lot of movement. This one works, experimenting is something you should be doing all the time. The analogy I like to draw in terms of why experimenting is good, why it helps you, and why you should implement it, is if you're walking down a path. Now, what people like to think that the best animators do, and I've said this before, is we walk. I don't know why I say we like the best animators. They take one perfect step in front of another. So here's the beginning of your shot, and here's the end of your shot, right? That we take one perfect step. I said we again. That's really embarrassing. Let me just cut out of the screen. I'm sorry. I do not mean to presume. That is really embarrassing. I take it all back. What the best animators do is they don't take one perfect step from the beginning of a shot to the end of the shot. No. It's not a straight path to success at all. Instead, what it is a constant. It's a movement that is marked with experiments that take you in the right direction. And notice how, sometimes you don't have to experiment as many times. Like here was 3 different ideas, here was 3 different ideas, here was 3 different ideas, but here was just one idea. And this was clearly not the perfect idea right here, because even after just working on it a little bit, the animator decided to redirect. This is what the progress of the best work that is out there looks like. Okay? Not this. Animators who have to do everything perfectly the first try, those animators are the slowest animators in the end. They might produce amazing stuff, but part of the job is getting your work done on time. Okay? So, unfortunately, if you're the kind of animator that has to do everything perfectly, or even simpler concept, if you're the kind of animator that has to think about and plan while you're animating, you should do all your planning for your shot. That's not what I'm saying. But if you, while you're animating, have to know deeply and for sure that what you're about to do and the animation you're about to create, or the keyframe you're about to set, or the pose you're about to create is perfect, then you're never, ever, 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 ever going to get to the ultimate skill level that you are capable of. Okay? The iterative process, the iterative approach is what I want everybody to start thinking about, okay? Where you get it to a certain point, and then you look what can take this shot further, okay? And not look at these ideas that you don't go with as failures. They're not. In fact, they're not only successful just for the shot that you're working on. All of those little experiments you do are animation experience. It's animation you're doing. It counts. Your 10,000 hours, it counts. So chalk it up as practice that you're getting even while you're working on a shot and a shot is progressing. And if I'm going to be really, really strict about this, I'm trying to non-uniformly scale it. Oh, there we go. There we go. Not only is marching in a straight line in a shot impossible, but even if you could do it, just the amount of hold up that puts on the creative process would make it take at least twice as long. Okay? So this is what we should all be going for. That adventurous attitude, that experimental attitude, where you don't know what you're going to discover in a shot. You're going to let the shot speak to you. Have a conversation with your work. Okay? It's a back and forth. Okay? So I'm just going to pop into the shot now and just continue working. And as I go along and I do a little bit of an experiment, I'll just point out what I'm doing, and we'll just handle it like that, okay? Make sure I'm all set up. I got my Altoids, got my Toids, got my bananas, got my water. Check. Perfect. Okay. So So this is the shot where Pierre is being knighted because he has saved the day. Of course, he saved the day. I'm not sure if I'm ruining the story for you guys. I don't know what you expected, but the good guy's gonna win in my film. It's not Quentin Tarantino here. Okay, here we go.
I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Okay, so what I want to do in this shot, what I want to accomplish is I want Pierre to be looking like this is the starting facial pose and everything. Like, everything needs to change. What I want it to feel like is he's like happy of what he's done, but when he hears that he's a knight now, it all of a sudden dawns on him that this is extra super good. This is better than he could have possibly hoped. Not only did he not die when he saved the day, he actually is going to be able to get the one thing that he desires, which is the hand of the princess. Okay, so that's in this section. So I left this pretty much open, the back half here, and I basically want him to all of a sudden dawn on him. And I don't know what that's going to be. So I'm going to put a couple ideas in. One is going to be that he kind of like, it kind of strikes him, okay? And it almost gets like
this shudder, like this almost like shaking through his body that is the moment of realization. Okay, so I'm just going to really quickly throw that in and then experiment with the timing of it. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little bit of work here. All right.
I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my...
So I'm just having him kind of lean and rise up just a little bit. And just putting a full body pose in. And I'll offset his head. I'll put overlap on his head after. And let's just have this overshoot just a little bit. Just a little bit in the upper spine. And just round it out just a tiny bit in the head. Like that.
In my court. Now.
Okay. Now, I want to now kind of see what a little bit of head shake will look like on top of this. So rather than destroy my work, one way where you can run an experiment is to throw an animation layer on real quick. What that gives you is the ability to adjust the animation kind of on the fly and also make changes that you can dial up and down later with the weighting. Okay, so I'm going to save a version of this. This is actually just version 1 already. Like I said, this is definitely, I mean, this is the layout. This is the true, dyed in the wool, shot from scratch here. Okay. So I'm going to add his spine and neck and head to a new anim layer. Excuse me. And I'm going to, on top of this animation that we're getting in the body overall right now, I'm going to add just a little bit of sort of like a shudder, just maybe back and forth once on this movement where he straightens up here. Okay. So I'm going to grab all those. Now, here's just a little thing that if you don't know, I'm in the anim layer right now, and I haven't added this hat control, for instance, to this anim layer. Okay, so what it's going to do is it's going to put it on the base anim layer. It's going to put any animation on the base that I do. If I don't grab it, or sorry, if I grab something that's not in the right layer. So you have to be a little bit careful because you can screw stuff up. If you lock it, then then you'll see that if I move it, it doesn't actually do anything. The only issue with that is that if you can keep it in mind that you have two different animation layers, then and that you're only putting animation on the controls that are in the animation layer that you're working on, and you're putting animation on all of the other controls that are not in the animation layer if you select them, you can do pretty well. it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to have to switch layers and unlock and lock stuff. So I actually like to work with it unlocked, but just being very, very, very careful. Okay, so I know what's in my animation layer right now. All right, and this his spine and his neck and head, okay, are in here. Okay, so I'm actually going to set some keys, and we have, see how there's different colored keys down here? I'm not sure if you can see that, but these are bright red, and these are a different color. So the best sort of visual indicator that you can use is to go by the keyframes that are down here. Anyway, so I'm going to do just this little shake in his body and his head. See, everything's twisted, everything's connected. But since this is a very kind of quick experiment, all right, and now in the base layer, I think I want to in the base layer, I think I want to overlap this a little bit already. So let me just move this a little bit, 2 frames in the head. Okay, now let's see what this looks like.
Knight in my court. In my court.
Okay, for me it's too slow. Right off the bat, it's too slow. So let me unmute this and select all the objects in here. Select the objects that are in here, right? And just right click on that. And let's make this much quicker. And I'm actually increasing the size of this thing a little bit. Okay. Let's select them again. And now let's crunch it together a little bit. I'm going to snap that too.
In my court.
Okay, good. It's not timed right.
In my court. My court. Now I dub these.
Let's constrain our timeline so that we're working efficiently and we're not watching too much animation that we don't need to see.
In my court. In my court.
I think it can be a little bit quicker.
Court. In my court. In my court. Court. In my court. In my court.
As the faster it gets, the better it looks. Look what I'm doing. I'm not saying to myself, what is this supposed to look like? The first instinct is I want something like this in there. And I don't even try to really define it too specifically past I want this to be sort of like a shake in his body and his head, right? I don't try to perform it myself too many times, although that is a good way if you have the time. Like if you're working at Pixar, I imagine that you have the time to flip on the camera real quick and, shoot a dozen, little takes of, different ideas for how this could work, and find the best one and sort of copy that into your scene and sort of pose it out the way you see it. But that is just a small example of using a workflow that sort of too heavily, in my opinion, too heavily relies on taking a perfect step, one perfectly placed foot in front of the other. Whereas what I'm doing, if you're seeing how loose and open what I'm doing is, you'll see that I'm all over the place. In fact, I'm not even really knowing what is going to be the result of the adjustments that I'm making, right? See, because take a look. I'm like watching this back and forth. I'm like moving the keys around. I'm like making it bigger and smaller. A couple frames here, a couple frames there. I just deselected it. Am I worried about where it ended up right now? No, and I can't even remember where it was. I'm going to watch it back, and that's kind of the point. That's kind of the major point here. I'm going to watch it back, and then I'm going to judge the animation that's in front of me. It's almost like you have to dissociate a little bit and sort of forget that you're the one that made the animation and just watch some animation in front of you. Pretend like it's somebody else's. And if the animation that you just saw is better than the animation that you saw like 2 seconds ago, then great, go with that. If it's not, then hit Control Z and you're back to the better one. And then you can do another experiment and another experiment and another experiment, right? I don't necessarily have a ton of keyframes in here that are really defining things or locking things down. Really, I don't. But what I do have is enough keys, enough of my idea roughly applied in the scene where the amount of work that it takes to manipulate it into something that is really well defined and nicely executed and all these things is far less than it would be to make it perfectly the first time. Okay, so let's continue with this experimentation and see and just see where it takes us. I'm literally doing this in front of your eyes. I'm not. This hasn't been planned. This is the first time I'm actually doing this shot. So, anyway, let's just keep on experimenting. I forgot where I was, but it doesn't matter. Seriously, I have no idea where I was, but let's just keep going.
In my cart, beat. In my cart, beat. In my cart, beat. In my cart, beat. In my cart. Night. In my cart. Night. In my
He's realizing it a little bit too quickly.
cart. Night. In my cart. Night. In my cart.
Actually, no, it's okay. Night, and then, huh?
Night. In my cart. Night. In my cart. Night. In my cart. Night. In my cart. Night. In my cart.
You know what? It's in the wrong order. Actually, yeah, it's in the wrong order. He should go away first. So let me just move this over here, move this back over here. All right, now watch it.
Cart. Night. In my cart. Night.
Oh, it's much better already.
Cart. Night. In my cart. Night. In my cart. Night. In my cart. Night. In my cart.
This key, though, let me snap it. This keyframe is a problem because Sorry about that. I'm not sure how much you just lost because I zeroed it and I'm not sure how much you've lost. So I'm going to go back about 2 minutes. I really apologize if you just lost that, okay? Anyway, so what I'm doing is I need to zero the character so that the animation layer and the anim layer I created and the base layer sort of line up and come back together, because I don't want weird rotations on this to affect the way the base animation works after this. So the first thing I did is I took the last keyframe and I made it the same keyframe as the base animation layer, the last keyframe. And then I selected all the controls in the anim layer 1 and then I zeroed them, okay? Like that. And there's a lot of different ways that you can like ghost your character. You can use ghosting with the animation in the animate menu. If you have a ghost plugin that's a little bit more efficient than that one, you can do it. But what I like to do is I just like to use the snipping tool. And so I took a snip of the character, and this is the pose that I need to match. And I find it's just as fast going into Maya and then just rebuilding the pose. Because you're not actually going to get much help from that you're not going to get much help from that ghost other than the position of your character. And we don't really need that, do we? Go back, and now we just need to make sure that any of the keyframes, make sure all of them are zeroed. Oh, see, they weren't zeroed. Let's just copy the key and make sure. I'm just going to copy the key and make sure, okay? Let's just do that.
In my court. In my court. In my court. In my court. Knight. In my court. Court. My court. Knight. In my court. Knight. In my court.
Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to block in a little bit of the facial expression and see, again, we're just going to kind of just play with the timing of it and really not try to worry about how it's put in there. We're going to get to the point where we can judge animation, right? Jump in be very judgmental. Scrutinize it really closely, but scrutinize it after you have it in there. And don't, kill yourself with all these, thinking to yourself, like, how am I going to get it in there perfectly or whatever before you even start, before you even begin. It's really depressing, actually, to think about. So I'm going to open the face picker. Stand by. What am I doing? There it is. It's fine. That's fine. So I'm just going to set some really base keys on his face. Actually, I should build a little bit less of a smiley pose here. Just a little bit. Kind of like a quizzical, a little more of like a quizzical look on his face.
Knight in my court.
Okay, so let's select all. The face is going to go. So what I know is the face is going to go before the body and the head. That's for sure, right? So, because like the eyes lead the head and the head leads the body and whatever, but the face is, very, very quick. It reacts very fast. But I do want to have a little bit of like a crunch, a little bit of anticipation. So I'm going to build these three poses. Here's the start pose, the sort of anticipation, a little bit crunched up pose, and then the surprise pose, and maybe a pose that's a little bit more overshoot, and then we'll go back to the surprise pose for settle. So basically 4 poses, and right now I'm not even going to worry about where I do them. I'm going to put them in, and then I'm going to slide them around. Okay. In fact, to prove that, I'm going to create them just 2 frames, just on 2s, even though that's not at all where they're going to go. Where's my eye thing? Left and right. And I should be posing this guy in panel because his default is like this, but then both of these brows are facing the same direction. So I'm cheating this one over a little bit. Well, I'm rotating it. It's super cheated by the rotation, but I'm also cheating it towards his head to make it sort of a little bit more of a sort of a graphic eyebrow shape, almost in composition. Like the 2D image is more of an eyebrow shape. Okay, I think a little bit of crunch up in the nose will go a long way here. A little bit of overdrive in the jaw. unpuff the cheeks a little bit. But I want to squint him. Squintin' Tarantino. Should I bring his lips out a little bit? Maybe just a tad. Just a touch. Okay. Key everything. 1, 2. Now his surprised face. Open his mouth. Big smile. Is this his teeth? Good. Okay, this will be the overshoot, and then we'll settle him down just a little bit. 1, 2. Oops. Which is actually eyes closed even a little bit more, actually. Right? Don't you think? Pose this in this camera view. Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay, let's save it so we don't lose all of our work. Even if we did have a catastrophic crash right now, we wouldn't lose much. All right, let's make sure we keyed all as well. And now let's experiment. Let's have fun. Okay? Here we go. I don't want to lose. Let's just first play around with the timing of the first transition. right? So how long? Actually, where does it start?
In my court. In my.
I think that's pretty good, actually. But, you know, we're never done there. Boom. 1 frame difference. And I'm looking only at when it starts and how long it takes to go to that first anticipation pose. All right, I'm dropping everything. I'm not even looking at it.
In my court. Knight. In my court. Knight. In my court.
Let's try 1 more frame.
In my court. Knight. In my court. Knight.
Too slow. Let's try 2 less frames.
In my court. Knight. In my court. Knight.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, let's move this this surprise pose, the overshot one.
My court. Knight. In 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 my court.
I think it's a little too early. Let's try a little bit later. 1 frame.
My court. Knight. In my court. Knight. In my court. Knight. In my court.
Let's try 2 more frames. Let's just push it. It's probably too late now, but don't know until you look.
My court. Knight. In my court.
Yeah, it's too late. I think it was good before. 2 frames earlier.
My court. Knight. In my court.
Okay. And now finally that last, you know, settle pose. I think it's going to be somewhere around here. Let's just to see.
Knight. In my court. Knight. In my court.
No, that's way too early. It needs to settle. It needs to take like 10 frames to settle.
Knight. In my court. Knight. In my court. Knight. In my court.
Let's try like end of the scene.
Knight. In my court. Knight. In my court.
Yeah, that's better. Maybe a little late.
Knight. In my court. 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 Knight. In my court.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Actually, you know what? Gotta give it due diligence, right? 1 more frame earlier.
Knight. In my court.
1 more frame earlier.
Knight. In my court. Knight. In my court.
No, it was better before. Cool. Okay. All right, another thing that we experimented with. We threw in our poses. It doesn't affect anything else. It's not affected by anything else except, you know, the controllers that are driving it around, the face I'm talking about. You know, it's not, you know, directly connected or wired into, you know, any of the other parts of the body. So it's perfect for experimentation. The face, I mean, just in general, maybe this should be, you know, if you're the kind of person that takes notes, maybe this is the note that you should write down, which is the face, because it's not actually completely wired or tied in to, you know, other controllers that are in the body. It's the perfect moment to sort of compartmentalize, section off a piece of the animation that you are totally free, absolutely 100%, you know, at liberty to experiment, try things out, and whatever. So that process that you just witnessed, where I was basically just grabbing, sliding around, testing and whatever, is not for show. It's not you know, just to, you know, try to impress you guys because I work so weirdly. It's how I work. This is how I do it. All right. Now, are we going a little bit slower because I'm recording a video and I'm talking about it? Yeah, a little bit. So if you're not sold on how fast this is as a workflow choice, just realize a little bit that I'm at about, you know, half speed because I'm talking about everything. I wouldn't be discussing these choices out loud. I would just be doing this experimentation, getting to the animation that I think is the best, and then moving on. Okay? So, but even still, even with that, you know, taken into consideration, after about 30 minutes of working here, this is what we have, right? We started with nothing, right? We started with just him being touched on the head, and he was completely still after that. And now we have, you know, I think a pretty nice experimented, you know, wiggled into performance of him sort of like it dawning on him, oh my God, I'm a knight now. So let's watch it back.
I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now I dub thee Sir Pierre,
I love this guy.
knight in my court. Now I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight.
Okay, here's something that I think is also, something that if you're the note-taking type that maybe you want to write down. Not only is the face sort of just by like technically, because of the way the controllers work and all that stuff, disconnected from the body, the eyeballs, the eye direction and blinks sometimes are also pretty much totally disconnected. So now I'm going to I'll do one more experimentation for you. I have this idea right now. It's only in my head. I have this idea that maybe he needs to kind of realize after a little bit of thought that he's a knight now. So maybe we need an eye dart downwards that he's thinking, and then he realizes and then finishes by looking back up at the king that just knighted him. So let's try that. I'm going to grab the eye aim, and there's all sorts of keys on it. I'm going to delete. All right. And the cool thing is that it's selected right now, right? And I can basically use it, just like this, right? I can basically, I don't even really need to see or care where, you're not seeing that. It's selected right now, and even though it's not even showing on screen, all I'm caring about really is that eye line, right? And I just said it's just up and down. So in terms of like min-maxing your workflow, this is just like one tiny little thing, but if you are interested in min-maxing your workflow, then like not even taking the time to go and like show the controller itself or switch to another view where it is visible and animate it that way. I mean, it might be like 5 seconds, but if you're that kind of person who you like absolutely really want to take your workflow to the max in terms of efficiency, having a picker is really, really advantageous. And then just using animating within the panel so that you can get to those choices quicker is something that you might want to consider. I don't know. I kind of like it. So gotta stay hydrated. So so what did I say? So where was that eye line? Okay, so I'm going to set a key right here, and then I'm going to have a eye dart that finishes right as his face starts moving. All right, so on the frame, not on this frame, right, where there's nothing. Right? Why? Because I don't want the eyes to go down, and then that frame where they've stopped, everything all of a sudden comes to life. It's like one thing moves, and then another thing starts moving, and then when it stops, another thing starts moving, and then it's like sort of like, mechanical, stuff like this. I hate animation that looks like this. It's kind of hard to do when we pay attention. Like I can't dance the robot. Anyway, so here we go. And then it comes back. Okay, so notice what I just did. I wasn't even looking at the panel. I just middle mouse dragged the eye line and set a key and whatever. Here's why. Because this is going to be 100% experimentation. What's the great part about experimenting with the eye lines is because one frame, forward or back, makes the world of difference, okay? And I can already tell what's going to happen. The later it takes for him to look back up at the king, the longer he's thinking about like what it means. The earlier he looks back at the king, the more he is, the thought process is pleased with the king, pleased that it happened. Okay, so let's just watch it in the sort of like the whatever default that I just created, and then we'll see.
I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now I dub thee Sir.
Okay, now let's see if what I was saying was true. All right, I'm going to push this way late, so that basically he's thinking about it the whole time.
Now I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now I dub thee.
Okay, this is a little bit distracting having such a slow eye dart, so I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it 2 frames.
Now I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now I dub.
Just make it 1 frame.
Now I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now.
And just sometimes if you're just like getting distracted by the fact that there's like no end, like for me right now I'm getting a little distracted by the fact that there's not a moving hole at the end here. Where is that animation? Who's got that animation? Who's got that? Ah, here it is. Okay. All right. So it's way too late, right? Obviously, it doesn't look great. Let's start experimenting.
Now I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now.
All right, halfway.
Now I dub thee Sir Pierre.
We're listening to too much of it. It's not efficient.
Knight in my court. Now Pierre, knight in my court. Now Pierre, knight in my court. Now Pierre, knight in my court.
Okay.
Now Pierre, knight in my court. Now Pierre, knight in my court. Now Pierre, knight in my.
All right, I'm going to do something crazy. I like the eye line because I think that the eye line is kind of making it feel a little bit like he's seeing it in his mind, and it's appropriately timed to when the king says knight. I'm going to grab the face again. And deselect this. There we go. And I'm going to move the face a little bit later. Let's experiment with the face against this eye choice instead. This is like in terms of experimentation, this is experimentation inception. This is experimentception here, because the face was generated entirely by experimentation, right? Yes, and the eyes were as well, but now what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we experimented with A. We also came up with experiment B. Now let's make a new experiment, C, which is what does A look like now put up against a new choice for B, right? So let's see what happens. I'm going to move it like 7 or 8 frames later. Nah, that's too much. No, let's do it. Let's do 6. Let's do 7 frames. Here we go.
Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now,
it's interesting, isn't it? It's very interesting. Let's move it a little bit further. See what happens. I don't know what's going to happen.
Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court.
That was too far, right? All right, let's come back 3.
Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court.
It's interesting. I'm going to go crazy here. I'm going to take the how can I do this? Let me save it. And I'm going to save a new version as 3. Okay. I'm pretty happy with what's going on in the animation on the head and neck and whatever on top of the base animation layer. So I'm probably going to merge these down, and so that I only have that one
in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court.
So they only have the one animation to deal with now. And I'm gonna make the animation on. Ooh, I did not plan on it baking it that densely. It's okay. We'll just move it twice. It doesn't matter. It's not that hard to move it twice. I'm going to move this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court.
Okay, now the eyes look a little bit early. See how we're wiggling into this? I love it. This is my favorite. The eyes are a little bit too early.
In my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. In my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court.
All right, check this out. What happens if I let the face sort of start like almost crunching up as the thought process develops? And all I have to do for that is move this one keyframe earlier. Oops, what am I doing? All right, here we go.
Pierre, knight in my court. Now, 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 Pierre, knight in my court. This
is the strongest yet. If you ask me, this is the strongest yet by far. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to just tweak. What is this? Rote Y? Yeah, I got to tweak the rote Y in his head because we're getting like a weird eye line right here, and I'd rather Pierre looks a little bit weird, just to be honest with you. I can't lie. He looks a little bit weird. At all but a few angles. There. I'd rather lose iris and pupil in the far corner in the around the orbit of the nose than on the near side, honestly. And if I tilt his head just a little bit more,
Knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court.
all right, he's fading a little bit too much, just in general. All right, so this is the most I want him to fade, right? So I'm going to set a key. I'm going to delete this one, and I'm going to move this to the end.
Knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court.
That was too much. I mean, too little. Let's try right here, 189, about halfway.
Court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court.
The jaw should overlap or overshoot the most. It should take the longest to overshoot, like that. But it should also settle much quicker than the rest of the face.
In my court. In my court.
The problem with the jaw is that we're losing it in foreshortening. And because around sort of like the horizon of this upper lip, we can't see that the mouth is opening. I have to start it a lot earlier. Than the rest of the face.
In my court. Now, Pierre, knight 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 in my court.
Okay. Bigger head nod, for sure. I mean, I'm starting to get into the choices that are not necessarily experimentation, but, well, I mean, they are. Like, here's an example. Here's a good example. Let's end on this example. I've been doing mostly slugging in pose choices and experimenting with timing because, like, I think you've realized that I'm sort of like on a timing kick. You know, for the past year, I've been sort of on a timing kick. And I mean, just overall, I've just felt that you get the most mileage out of your experimentation with working with timing, like especially with like eye lines. You know, like we saw, like the eye line completely changes what he's thinking about, if it comes earlier or later, or how long it takes, and that kind of thing. So that said, though, there's also experimentation with posing, right? And it's the same kind of attitude. It's the same workflow. Remember, one more time, you don't try to take a perfect step. You don't try to make it perfect in your mind before you do anything on screen. That was one of the issues that really held back my animation for a long time. I was, I'll tell you a little story. Here's a little anecdote. Not very many of you know this, but I used to use only 3ds Max. In fact, I used to use it back when it was in DOS, and then it was in Windows, and I had 3ds Max. It was actually called 3D Studio Max back then. I mean, it still stands for 3D Studio, but like the official name for it is 3ds Max. I don't know, whatever. So 3D Studio Max, version 1.2. And what I used to do is I used to get all of the demos and trials of plugins, and that's what I would do all day. Is I would just like use plugins, and I would like make like fireballs and tornadoes and like lava and cloth like with fur on it, like all these things. And I would spend all my time just doing like CG and not animation. Even though I wanted to be a character animator, I was still just caught up with that. And what I call it is shuttle launch conditions, right? It's like conditions that are so perfect that you'll never get them, right? If you're always waiting for shuttle launch conditions to start animating, or to put an idea on paper, or to put an idea into your scene, you're never going to get anywhere. I think I've told you guys this anecdote in another lecture, so I'll keep it very short for this one. There was my wife went back to school, and she was taking photography. There was a class in which they had to take portraits on film. She took her portrait with me in the backyard, and it took us hours and hours and hours, and we got one portrait. Well, basically, she shot one roll of film, and she took one portrait of me, and that was the assignment. Well, the assignment was actually to learn how to expose film outdoors in daylight. She turned in her work, and then they all got their work back, and as she was leaving the class, she saw this woman that had a photo of like these two kids like jumping off of a fountain in the park. And she was like, "Oh my God, how did you get that? That's unbelievable. It's amazing." My husband and I, we sat in the backyard. He was miserable. It was the baking hot sun. He had to hold the bounce cards, and I had to, the light meter, and I was exposing or whatever. It was a nightmare. How did you get those kids to sit still for that? And she said, "Well, actually, the first weekend I went out, they had like 3 weeks for the assignment. The first weekend I went out and I shot like 5 rolls of film in the park. And I came back to the dark room, and I developed them all, and they were all black. The second week, I shot another 5 rolls, and I developed them, and they're all slightly overexposed. So they're all just a little bit bright. And then I went out last weekend, and I shot another 5 rolls, and this was one of the shots in there. So my wife waited for shuttle launch conditions, was creating them for herself, and also like basically wanted to only take the photo when she was sure everything was perfect. Like her idea for the angle, her idea for like the lens and the focus, her idea for where the bounce cards should be and the way my face should be lit, her idea for the distance for me to camera, her idea for my expression, all these things. She got them perfect. She did. But at the end of the semester, this other woman could, anytime she wanted, put her camera around her neck, go to a park, and she could fire off 5 rolls of film and get amazing shots. My wife, on the other hand, at the end of the semester, couldn't do that. She still had only had the experience of I just gave it away right now. She only had the experience of doing it sort of like one step of another one, whereas the other woman experimented, right? So that you want to be that other woman, all right? You want to be the person that the act of experimenting is part and parcel of your workflow. It's part of the way that you gain experience while you're doing something else. All right, it's part of your 10,000 hours, but it's also contributing to the shot that you're working on in the moment, right? So, and remember how I showed you on that image, I didn't save it, I should have saved it, but on that image I circled those little tangents, and I said that these are not all wastes, right? Well, think about that woman. As she was shooting that roll of black film, right, she might have thought to herself, it's very easy to think to yourself, like, oh, what a waste. all this film is black. What a waste. Well, guess what? All that film taught you that my poor wife never got to learn. Right? Was it a waste now, in retrospect? And then the overexposed shots, are those a waste? No. Right? Okay. So that's the attitude we want. So we don't have to necessarily just experiment with timing. The amount that the head kind of ducks down here, right? Like this. This is on the base layer. I'm going to adjust this, and I'm just going to watch it and see if I like something a little bit better. And I'm not doing this for your benefit. Well, I mean, I am. I mean, this is a lecture on my site. But what I mean by that is I'm not doing this just to, like, show you, like, oh, this is how it could work. This is actually kind of, all there is to my workflow.
Court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now,
More.
Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court.
More.
Now, Pierre, knight in my court.
More.
Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre,
Too much.
knight in my court. Now,
Still too much.
Pierre, knight in my court.
Still too much.
Pierre, knight in my court.
Not enough.
Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court.
A little more.
Knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight.
Awesome. Now let's have it overshoot and come back just a little bit, not as subtly. Okay? So a little bit more overshoot. And that's what that is right there. Okay, here we go.
Court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre,
More.
knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre,
A little bit later.
knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre,
A little bit
knight
less.
in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay?
Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court.
Now let's have it all. This is another timing one. I know I said I was going to do all posing. Let's do just one more timing one. I'm curious myself.
Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre,
One frame?
knight in my court. Now, Pierre, knight in my court. Now, Pierre.
Nope, it was better before. One frame. One frame makes all the difference. Okay. So, as you can see, all right, it's been about an hour of working on this, and we've gone through like 5 or 6 experiments, and considering that I was talking through all of them, I do not think that this is bad for an hour of work. So let's take a look.
I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now, I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now, I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now, I dub thee Sir Pierre.
I don't know. If you ask me, it looks like he's being knighted and he's happy about the whole thing, but it looks like it dawns on him that, oh my God, I'm a knight. To me, it does.
Knight in my court. Now, I dub thee Sir Pierre, knight in my court. Now,
I don't
dub
know.
thee Sir
I'm pretty happy with this. And for an hour of work, I mean, probably if I was focusing, had a little bit of dubstep going on, I wasn't talking through what I was doing, this would probably be about a half-hour work, which, I mean, if you think about it, is even better return on investment in terms of, taking, experimenting and even going down tangents and sort of finding things that aren't quite working, getting quicker to a result, and in my opinion, a better result, getting quicker to a better result. And isn't that what workflow really is all about? Okay, so that'll wrap us up for this month. I really appreciate you guys being around and being here, supporting the site. I just want to, take a second at the end of this lecture while I have your attention to thank you sincerely. KennyRoy.com is a huge undertaking. It's a lot of work, but at the end of the day, man, I wouldn't give it up for anything. I'm so glad to have you guys. I hope you're telling your friends about it because I think it's a resource that is unique and can help a lot of people. So refer your friends. I appreciate it if you can. And in terms of what we saw today, just to recap, I just really want to encourage everyone to not be so, don't try to create that perfect shot that's in your mind. You'll never create what's in your mind. You never will. You'll get to something even better if you stop trying to create what's stuck in there. All right, and you start working right here. You start looking at what's in front of you and have a conversation with your work. And the only way to do that is to experiment, have an experimental attitude, and be fearless. And as you were watching, I hope you were paying attention and seeing how I was completely unmarried to the result of what I was doing. In fact, most of the time, I had no idea what I was doing. I know my way around Maya. I know how to throw things in. And then once I threw it in, then I would watch it back as if I didn't even animate it, as if it wasn't even my animation. I would just kind of watch it and go, well, that's good animation. And then I would make a quick change, then get instant amnesia, forget that I was the person that did that, and then I would watch something else and I would say, well, that's better animation than, whatever it was that I just watched before, and then I knew I was on the right track. That's the kind of just fearlessness and sort of relaxed and open workflow that I'd like for you guys to take on. And it's a lot of fun. It's so much more fun than trying to wait for shuttle launch conditions and just trying to be perfect all the time. It's exhausting to be perfect all the time, guys. All right. So with that, thanks again for watching, being a part of KennyRoy.com. Don't forget you can suggest new lectures to be done here on this site by going to the resource wish list in the forums. It's been a pleasure. Thanks again. Good luck with your animation. And as always, rock on.